Welcome to the Real Dad Podcast. I'm Dave. I'm Joey.
Oh my God. I'm Mark.
I'm Brian.
And
Mike.
Yes.
We have a guest.
welcome to the show. Brian, give us the Let's Dad.
Let's Dad. Sorry, I let you down.
All
I was waiting for
right.
Mike. It was a whole thing.
We have Michael Holmes with us. I know you. Do you prefer Mike? Mikey?
Why Michael?
Jimmy
Michael. I
Bob?
guess I prefer Michael. Jim Bob sometimes.
All right.
But I go by Michael just to differentiate. When your dad names you the same name, it's like you gotta switch it up somehow.
Right. I respect that. We have Michael Holmes with us. And this is our first kind of Google Meets recording of the podcast. So
Yes.
there might be a little lag here. There might be a little stuff going on. We think it's recording. We hope we've got an episode here for you. So we're seeing what we can do. The reason, Michael, you've been a dad for a little while now. And we've been chatting about having you on the podcast.
Yeah. I've been my daughter.
There's the lag. See? There's the lag. We got it.
Just let him have it.
We've been hoping to have you on the show for a while now since you became a new dad, and we've been trying to make it work in person so badly, but it just has not been lining up, so we're super glad to be able to have you via Google Meets today.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me, and I appreciate the patience on this because I really did want to make it happen in person. Just because Brian, it's the first time I'm meeting you, but Mark, Joey can't be here, Dave, love all you guys and your energy. So I was hoping to be there, but as you guys know, I've got a little one. She's just over a year and a half now, and I got another one on the way in about a month. So it's hard to get away when you're far away.
Yeah. So let's just jump right into, okay, you guys waited a little bit longer in life maybe to have kids because you and Lisa have known each other since childhood. You have dated, you got married.
Let him tell the story. Let him tell the story.
Yeah. So tell me about that journey to when you were ready. Was it a conscious decision that you were ready to have kids?
Yeah, so Lisa and I met when I was 17. We met at a charity golf tournament. She worked at this golf course, and it was my first time ever golfing. Someone in the foursome got sick, and my dad was like, "Hey, do you want to come?" So, as fate would have it, I met Lisa there, and we dated for about a month. And she said to me, she's like, "I've got a one-way ticket to Europe, and I'm not looking for anything serious." And I was like, "Well, we'll see about that." And she broke up with me shortly after that, as she said. She's a woman of her word. And then, to make a long story short, we stayed connected over the years and went back and forth. Like there was no ill feelings between us. In fact, there was quite the opposite. And 7 years later, we got back together and got married 4 years later. And then we had a kid. It was we knew we wanted kids. It was just a when thing, and with work and life just being kind of as crazy as it is sometimes, it was just one of those things that were like we always prioritized each other first. We were like, when should we have kids? And because we both felt and still feel so young, I guess there wasn't a rush at first.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I understand that feeling, right? And I still feel young. My oldest is 12 now, but I still feel like a kid.
You still are a kid.
I'm like, how am I responsible for these human beings right now? This does not make sense. I should not have been given this right.
Yeah. What a nice way of saying it too, this right.
So Joey and I know Michael through HGTV. So we, back in the day when we were, actually before I think Decked Out even started, we were on his dad's show, Homes on Homes, as like a little guest appearance. Paul was doing a deck for them and stuff. So we kind of got to meet them through that. The first time actually I remember seeing and meeting Mike, and I don't even think I got to meet Mike at this time. He might even not know it exists, but I know it was him. We were at his dad's house building a deck for his dad. and Mike came to the shop, and I think they were like painting a door or doing something. I swear they were just sent to keep tabs on us to make sure that we weren't fucking around. And I was like, oh, I think I know that guy. So we kind of had this like passing by. We never really got to spend time together. And then Family Home Overhaul was a show that brought everybody together to renovate one house and transform that house to be able to give away to somebody who was going to win. They were going to compete to win. So on season 1, Michael and I were on the same episode together. So I was with Joe Alcorn.
Family Home
He was
Overhaul
with,
or Home to Win?
This was Home to Win.
Yeah.
Did I say the wrong name?
You said Family Home
Thank
Overhaul.
you for correcting me. I'm glad you know.
Very welcome.
But we were on the same
I
episode
read
together.
Joe autobiography once.
I think I was with Joe Alcorn and you were with Mia Perez or Paris. And I got to jump into Michael's arms and he caught me and carried
Obviously,
me.
yeah.
And I've never stopped thinking about him since.
That's fair. That's fair.
We set a pretty strong bond that day.
Yeah.
I was gonna say I had that moment when I saw him snow blowing without a shirt on in like minus 30-degree weather. I'm just saying, little thirst trap there.
You got to throw the odd thirst trap out there. Look, I don't work hard to just keep my shirt on. Okay,
Right?
I take the bad boy off any chance I can get.
Love that. So tell me about. I mean, I'm a big fan of birth stories, and you don't have to go into the whole birth story.
Oh,
But-
they have a crazy birth story.
Tell me about what it was like that moment becoming a dad.
So we decided, we knew all along that we wanted to do a home birth. We're, I would say, not very traditional in that sense. Unless you consider home birthing traditional, then we're very traditional. So we set up. We knew that's what we wanted. So on the day when it happened, like I'll never forget. This is, I think, there are so many days I have that are like my top day in my life, but I think this one is like the very top. Up there with getting married to my wife and many others. But it was, my wife woke me up at like, I think it was like 5 or 5:30 in the morning. And I could hear her breathing very heavily. And I'm like, I'm like, you okay? She's like, today's the day. Today's the day we're going to meet Azura. And
She just knew.
it came on quick. And our midwife, so we had midwives at the birth. They're like, once you hit the 411, a minute of contractions every 4 minutes, lasting an hour, over the period of an hour. Sorry, then call us and let us know, and we'll instruct you from there. And I'm like, okay, it's 5:30 in the morning. I'm super chill, not chill, but I'm trying to give off the vibes that I'm chill. And I called the midwife and I'm like, hey, I just want to give you a heads up. My wife is going into labor. She has contractions, and she's like, is it 411? I'm like, not yet. She's like, okay, well, you don't need to do that. I was like, okay, cool. Sorry for waking you up. And then fast forward, she's like, probably just go back to sleep. I'll probably see you later on tonight. And I'm like, okay, I'm gonna need to just kind of rewind a little bit and relax. And then we're kind of it's just my wife and I, and contractions are picking up. I'm noticing, I'm like, okay, this is getting more intense and it's happening. I'm just looking at the clock. I'm like, this seems to be happening every 4 minutes, and it's lasting what seems to be a minute. And then, so I start tracking it without telling her. I'm like, holy shit, like we're on track here. I'm like, you're getting like full on labor contractions. And the labor itself was so intense. It was the most like present moment where it was like anything else in the world could have been happening at that time, but it was just me and my wife. And there was a midwife there. Yeah. We had our friend there kind of acting as a doula, but she was recording and capturing the moment for us. We wanted that. And it was just us. Like, my wife is doing the most beautiful thing you can possibly imagine, just giving birth to a child. It's like this, as you all have experienced, it's this miracle of life. And it was just us. And in those 5 hours, which, it seemed like the blink of an eye, it was just like the deepest connection that I can possibly, it's so hard to put into words, but you're just like, as a dad, you're like, all I can do is let you know I'm here for you. because you can't take away the pain. You can, like, they'll squeeze you if they want to squeeze you. You picture in your mind, you're like, I'll massage you, I'm gonna light candles, and it's like in the moment, it's just like whatever happens and whatever she wants, that's all that matters. And it was just you're just so present in that moment. And then until we met our little girl, it was like so magical. My wife caught her, like she gave birth on all fours, caught her, and then we were all in bed after that. Like, it was incredible. It was the most magical day of my life.
Yeah,
That's wild,
awesome.
man. I that's why I love birth stories, because everybody has such a different experience. And I think of like with the What to Expect When You're Expecting and the book on like this is how it could go, and it's like no, there are 101 different ways it could go. Because like mine, I remember having the phone out and I was tracking the contractions on my phone and like using an app to see like how long they were lasting, because we had to go to the hospital earlier. We were basically being induced because my wife's blood platelet count wasn't very good. So they wanted the baby to come out sooner than later. So we were just like, they told us to walk around the hospital. And we were just walking, and she'd get a contraction, and then we'd keep walking again and keep walking until it slowly started to build up and build up. I think they were going to induce her, but because it started to progress naturally, they were like, okay, we're good. And then same thing. It just like you go from 0 to 100 within seconds. And for ours, I remember the lights coming on. They ended up having to use a suction to help get them out, and it's like dark and the lights on and this vacuum.
I could have done without that. I could have done without sound
Baby
effects.
pops out, but it's just like watching your wife go through. I think it's one of the weirdest experiences to be a bystander to, because you're feeling such complex, big emotions while watching your wife in pain. Like there's the pain and they're going through them. I don't even know if they're feeling the same emotions, but like you want to help your wife, you want to do something, you know what's happening, you're worried, you're excited. Like as a dad, you're just standing there watching this experience happen, and you can't contribute anything to it other than like water or hold a leg or hold an arm or pat a back. No, not that spot on the back, a different spot on the back. Like it's an intense experience.
My wife was KO'd, high as flying kites.
You had a C-section, right?
I didn't. She did. But
Okay,
thanks for
that's
asking.
good.
2 of them, in fact. So she was like completely out for both. So I'm literally just sitting there,
Wild.
and I'm like rubbing her hair. Her eyes are like closed, open, and for us, it was just kind of like, should I look over the blanket? No, don't look over the blanket. Should I look over the blanket? I'm going to want to pass out on her. So I literally just standing there holding her hands, and then you see the baby, they bring it out from behind the sheets. So it's like, it's totally different because
That does.
I don't want to say you feel like you get robbed, but
You're
like
not like getting the high intense.
I don't have the
excitement
story of these
totally
situations of
different.
such intense intimacy.
Right.
Yeah.
It's just more of like kind of holding your friend as they're drunk at the toilet kind of situation. But then you get like a really cool present for it. You know what I mean?
So was Robin put into an emergency C-section, or was that always the plan?
She was put into an emergency C-section for the first one. So she was leaking in meiotic fluid. So we had
Okay.
to go in 6 weeks early. And then,
That's really early,
yeah. And then our daughter was in the hospital for a long time after.
Yeah.
And then we had because she had already had a C-section for my son, COVID it was like weird times with the COVID, and we weren't allowed to go. And it was like this whole weird thing. So he was 2 weeks early, I think, or something like that. They did like he was upside down or something, and her blood. She'll tell the story. I'm butchering it. She'll tell it much better than I am.
But definitely a very unconventional, or maybe conventional to some.
Honestly, it was just a whirlwind because my wife's dad had passed maybe like a week or 2 before we found out that we were expecting our son.
Right.
So that whole like pregnancy was very like delicate. It was a really traumatic time. So I don't remember much of it, to be totally honest with you. I remember sitting in the hospital and I wasn't allowed to go in, and my wife was like really upset because they were like, she had fluid in her heart and she was really torn because her doctor pushed her to get the vaccine while she was pregnant.
Okay.
And so she was like, her inner circle was basically telling her that she was wrong for doing that. And that's why she had this fluid and they got to think about the baby. And then in those times, it was
It's not helpful.
no. And then she goes, I drive her to the hospital and I'm sitting in the parking lot because they wouldn't let me in. And the doctor's like, you need to make a decision on whether or not you want to go in and do an x-ray. But then she's like, well, the radiation isn't good for the baby. And they're like, well, you need to make this decision. She's like, can I call my husband? She's like, no. So I just remember sitting there in the parking lot for, I don't know, it was like 8 hours or something.
Wow.
And then she came out and she was like just completely devastated.
Oh man.
And then she basically said like, we have to go in and do the C-section. Like it was like a week later or something. So
Right.
yeah, it was a weird time. But I always get not envious, but like I always find it interesting and fascinating of what it would be to watch like a natural birth.
Right.
Yeah. I'm jealous of you guys basically.
That must have been extremely difficult, like from not only as a perspective, like as like the paternal perspective of as a husband, for your wife, that must have been extremely difficult. But then to be like, oh, I can't go in the hospital. And all the other crap is happening at the same time with the pandemic and everything. But
Yeah.
like that's, as the husband, you're like, this is what I can do, is I can be there for her. This is what I can do, is like make her feel loved. So that must have felt like the longest 8 hours of your life having to do that.
Yeah, honestly, it was I've kind of talked about a little bit about like my relationship with God and stuff, and I'm not really sure where that is at, but I just remember talking to her dad who had just recently passed, and it felt like he was kind of there with me. And then we got hit with probably the worst thunderstorm, and I'm sitting in my truck and the rain's just coming down and the things, whatever. And then it was this weird kind of like, everything's going to be okay. Now she comes out distraught and this just happened. And I just had this like out of body experience basically.
Right.
So now I'm trying to tell her like, everything's going to be okay. And she was like, not having it in that moment. So it is kind of it's a tricky situation. You're both on two different planes, and it really took us having like a deep conversation for her to put things into my perspective. I don't know how to say that, but
Yeah.
But basically she's like, I'm afraid for my life. And it's the first time where I basically was like, holy shit. Like imagine being in that situation where childbirth to me has always just been like, that's just what happens. That's just how it goes. But for her specifically, she's like, I could legitimately die.
Right.
And that's where I was like, she's a unicorn. Like it's crazy.
I feel like every woman probably deals with an aspect of that,
Totally.
especially with the intensity of pain that comes with childbirth. Of like, is this death? Like, is this where I'm going? And I think like there are even some odd similarities where either way, in my story, Michael's story, your story, you're still a bystander in it all.
Totally, yeah.
Where it's like your wife was going through all of those feelings, all of those emotions, and there's nothing you can actually do to do anything. Like you could buy her a coffee, you could get her something, you could bring her water, but like there's nothing you can do to get inside her brain and ease that tension at all, right?
But you want to.
Oh, so
unless you're a piece
badly.
of shit.
Right.
Yeah.
It's funny though, because sorry, I don't know if I know there's a delay here, so I hope I didn't cut anyone off.
You're doing great with it.
100%.
It's funny though, because as men and as husbands, like, first of all, men and women handle things so different. Women are like, if there is a problem in a woman's life, they're like, I want to be heard. And a man's like, okay, how are we going to solve this problem? And it's like, we handle things very different that way, where it's like, even in that moment of childbirth, it's like, really what it comes down to is like, we just have to be there and make them feel seen and make them feel heard. And it's like, regardless of our situations, whether it's a C-section, whether it's a home birth, hospital birth, you're walking around, like, it's like our job as the husband is like, be there and make them feel that love.
Yeah.
I find it interesting because in certain circumstances, neither one of you know what it is that you want or need.
Right.
And phrasing that like, what do you need from me right now?
Yeah.
It almost kind of puts things as like a pause, and there's like a moment where you both reflect and like, do you need me to fix this for you, or do you just need me to listen? And obviously when you're in a childbirth situation, things are escalated and you can't really say like,
Don't be that guy that's like, what do you need now? What do you need now?
Yeah,
Don't
exactly.
do that either.
Yeah.
It's also a very similar feeling when it's like 6 o'clock and like nobody knows what's happening with dinner yet, and everybody's just getting
that's the
hungry.
worst.
No.
That's the fucking
So
worst.
Brian, you guys had a home birth for your third as well, right?
Yeah, and it was very similar experience, just very fast. And I was gonna say, it's funny to think about how many times they get that nervous partner phone call for the first birth, where they're like, I think something's happening, and they're like, all right, like it's gonna be hours still, and then it turns out that it's not actually. It's coming really fast, and you were actually right to call them from the beginning. That happened to us as well. And then we even when we got to the hospital for our first one, they were like, is this your first? And she's like, yeah, but like, I'm pretty sure like the baby's coming like now. And they're like, okay, yeah, just go sit over there.
Yeah.
She's like, no, I feel like I will actually sit on my baby's head if I sit down right now. It's like, the baby is coming. And it turned out the baby was there like within a couple hours. But yeah, our home birth was a very similar experience. And like I connected mostly with the emotional, just incredible emotional experience that it was. And like just the, kind of oneness you have with your partner in that moment, is just, there's nothing that compares to it. I don't want to,
it feels great.
I feel bad. I feel bad
cool.
saying that after you just shared your story.
Everyone gets their moment.
But it really was. It was like everything we could have hoped for. And it was like the most incredible experience watching her work through that experience. And it was surreal to just be like you said, sitting in our bed with a newborn baby, like half an hour after the birth, just chilling.
What do you do with the sheets? Like,
So you have like a bunch of basically just garbage sheets on your bed that you throw it afterwards.
you just toss them.
Yeah.
That's smart.
That's what we did anyway.
Our midwives were there. They took the sheets, and obviously like you prepare, like, I mean, as a contractor, I had drop cloths, I had some poly kicking around there, like
Dexter's.
Yeah, literally.
Yeah,
it was prep, but it was like it wasn't even, obviously there's some fluids, there's a bit of a mess, there's some blood, there's some but the sheets after, like our midwives threw them in the washing machine like right away, and it was like completely clean sheets after. I'm like, this is incredible.
Yeah.
It was wild.
One question for both of you who have had home births. Was there a level of fear in not having the access to hospital stuff if you needed it? Where like if an emergency C-section came up or if there was a complication, was that a risk you were willing to take, or was it you felt safe in the situation you were going into?
For us, it was, you go first. No, it's okay.
I'll say for us, we were, we're very, like, my wife went to naturopathic med school. She's got her doctorate in naturopathic medicine. We're both like, we did a lot of research, read a lot of books, and we both believe that although there can be emergency scenarios with birth, the act of giving birth itself is not an emergency. So we were very comfortable with that at home. And though, to Mark's story, there are times when you need that hospital. So it's like, there is a plan B. So for us, we're like, this is, if anything does happen, we want to go to this hospital. It's the closest. And this is our plan. But as everyone knows, when it comes to what's the old saying with, it's like when you make a plan, God laughs or something like that, or but Yeah, but it was for us. Like I felt I would feel more uncomfortable in the hospital, to be perfectly honest.
What is the reason for that?
Um, I trusted our midwives immensely, and they
Yeah.
had like they go over things like especially when you're with kid number one, they go over everything. They're like, here's the equipment we're gonna have. Here's what we can do to help
Right.
in case of like if there's pain. Here's what we can do for this. Here's what we can do. They go through like every situation. So I was like, I feel like we're covered here. I feel like you know if there is an emergency situation, then we need to go to the hospital. I don't know. I think maybe I just. I also have so much faith in my wife. I'm like during that process, I know if she's like things aren't going well, she's going to communicate that with me. And so I don't know. There was just a level of like, I'm also very optimistic generally. So I'm like, this is just going to go well.
Yeah, I can relate to those feelings. The only other thing I would say is like when you're using like the midwifery program or
Whiffery sounds like
Yeah,
a
no,
fart.
I thought that too when he said it. I couldn't help but giggle a little.
yeah,
That's what they call him.
it's
Midwifery.
midwifery. Yeah.
Yeah.
That sounds like flatulence.
Anyway, when you go that route, you start. The mom starts meeting with them very early on in the process, and she has lots of follow-ups with them, and you kind of just build this level of trust with them.
Yeah.
So, and especially closer and closer to the birth, there's a lot. It's a lot more frequent. So you're seeing them like once or twice a week, even. And you'll know if like all the signs will be there for the most part. If there's going to be any issues, they can kind of see how things are trending. Obviously, like we've said, like emergencies still happen, but for the most part, you just kind of trust them to know that if they say you get the green light to have the home birth, then you just trust that it's all going to work out.
It's like a home game versus an away game. You know, you've got your at home crowd, you've got your room, you've got everything you need to have a good game. You know,
exactly.
For let's go to Michael first on this. Was it a team decision? Did you both decide on that, or for you was it Lisa being like, "This is what we're doing," and you got on board with it, or how did that roll out?
It was a team decision. It was certainly like since we started talking about kids, I didn't have the experience in like in medicine that she has. So she was the one who was like, I want to do a home birth. And I'm like, okay, I don't know what that entails. But so I followed her lead on that. But I will say, like touching on what I said before with our comfort level, like I've had a lot of bad experiences with doctors. I've had family have bad experiences with doctors. So it's like, I think there's a level of trust there. Not saying that it's like contractors for me. I'm like, there's good, there's bad, and there's good. Like, there's some people who are doing it for the paycheck, some people who are passionate about it and care about their patients, and then there's people who just kind of check out. So I'm like, I know there's certain things that we can handle, and to me, I'm like, with my wife by my side, like I can take on the world, and vice versa. Like she feels that same way with me. So I think I feel like I got off topic here. Oh, back to it was just like we knew that like we just need each other, and to Brian's point, there's so many like you start these meetings. Oh God, I can't remember 10 weeks, 12 weeks in with the midwife, we'll say, and you meet throughout, and then they do a home birth assessment, and they kind of go through everything. You ask them questions. You're like, what happens if this happens? Where do we put the equipment? And what if we don't want you in the room? They're like, oh, well, we'll go into another room. And so you have every question that you want answered. They walk you through it. So it's like, I would suggest anyone, if you're giving birth, if you plan on giving birth, if you're giving birth and you want to have another kid, having midwives around is incredibly helpful. Like it was.
Yeah. Is it? Do you have to sign up for a group chat? Like, is there another group chat involved with that? Like group thread, text, or anything?
Not necessary.
Because I'm out.
It's funny because we had midwives for or first, but then they had to transfer care to the doctor. And then same thing with the second. So then with the third, it was like the midwives were like, listen, you don't need us. Just go to the doctor. They're going to deal with it.
Yeah.
But I ended up, and I think I've told this story on a past podcast. So if you've listened to it before, then sorry, suck it.
Did you just say suck it?
To our audience, yeah.
You just told our listeners to suck it.
Suck it. Anyways.
Stop with the whiskey. Put the whiskey down. You just told people that are giving their
They'll
time
keep
to
listening,
us
don't worry.
to quote unquote suck it.
I mean, we don't know what it is.
But
He
hasn't
did the
clarified
Generation
that.
X. He crossed his hands and he patted his penis.
But
And
I
he
could
said,
be
suck it.
anything.
I got to experience a home birth, and it was my sister-in-law. They were going to have a home birth, and then there were some complications that the midwife was a little worried about. So they decided to get into the car and head to the hospital. On the way to the hospital, my sister-in-law was like, this baby is coming out. Like, it's happening now. We're not going to make it to the hospital. Her husband was driving. He got to the in-laws where I was staying at the time. And I'm passed out, sleeping in my bed. My wife was with my sister-in-law, having just the loveliest dream. In walks my father-in-law. David, we're going to need you to get out of the room because Julie's going to have her baby here. I was like, oh, she is? Oh, okay. And I come stumbling out of the room as the car pulls into the driveway. They say, go to the car, grab some towels. They're in the back seat. I go to the truck. I grab the towels out of the back seat. I come back into the house. And as I come back into the house, I hear a baby crying.
Yeah.
And this is before I've had any kids. I put the basket down and I'm just bawling my eyes out on the other side of this door, hearing like this new life that just came into the world on the other side of the
So
door.
cool.
It was so wild. Like, it's just like I left the house and there wasn't a baby. And then I came back in the house and all of a sudden
Yeah.
there's new life. Like,
That's wild.
it's just such a magical moment. And I know we talk a lot about the moment and having the amazing experience. And I just want to say that, like, if you have experienced a birth that has not gone well, or if
Yeah.
you have had a loss, then I sympathize with you, and I am so sorry that you've had to experience that. It must be one of the biggest pains that I couldn't imagine going through. Sometimes I feel bad when we're talking about like the magic of how amazing it is, and I worry that there's like a listener out there who's gone through a couple that haven't, and they're expecting their next, and they're just waiting in that fear. And I think that's why I asked that question, even about the fear around the home birth. And I love your optimism about that. And I think everybody should go into childbirth with the utmost optimism that they can have. But it is a scary experience. I know for myself, just like, and my wife having a special needs brother, not knowing, one, if the baby was going to be okay. Two, is there going to be any special needs coming out of this? Are there going to be any complications? There's just so much that you can potentially worry around with a new life coming into the world.
Yeah.
For us, that worry was there for our first. Yeah, that worry was totally there for us. And that was part of the reason why we had our first in the hospital. Is my wife was just she just felt like that was the safest place to be.
Right.
And then after the second, she was feeling very confident about just like how her births and pregnancies had gone. So then she was like totally confident in having the home birth at that point.
Yeah.
Like I had a friend who had home births and home water births. So I was like on team, like, let's have a home water birth. So, but she wasn't up for that, which is fine. Obviously, I was also team do whatever you want because it's your body. But I was definitely on board for the home birth. That was a team decision for number 3, but it didn't come without its list of fears through the whole process.
It's scary, man.
Yeah.
There's so many things to think about with childbirth. I mean, becoming a parent in general. Like I had a discussion with someone. I'm like, maybe I'll say it here first, but I want to write a book about what to expect when your wife's expecting. Like from the dad's point of view, I'm like, there's so many things. Like I don't know about you guys, but I read books beforehand. I'm like, how can I prepare and what can I do best? And so many lessons learned along the way of like how to be a supportive husband. Like I feel like doing this the second time around, I'm like, oh, I know what to expect more, and I know how to be more supportive to my wife more, like in ways that I'm like, you realize just how taxing it is on the body, like that you're creating a human. Like we're sitting here at one point, we were all in our mother's uteruses, and we're like,
Yeah.
we're like, it's this wild spectacle to be a part of that. You're like, oh, you know, we have sex and we make a baby, and however that happens with everyone's story is different. But and then it's like you watch this, your wife, you watch her grow, and then you watch this baby be born into the world, and you're like, it's a miracle. Like it is truly incredible to be a part of, and incredible to see. Like there's so many what ifs and so many questions and so many things that, like, yeah, I don't know. I'm going off on a tangent now.
So Mike, it's very early in your parenting journey, but we often talk about like what kind of dads we want to be. So what kind of dad do you want to be?
That's a great question. I want to be a fun dad, a dad who loving. I think first and foremost, when I was a kid, my parents got divorced when I was really young. I was 4 years old, and I saw my dad every second weekend, so I didn't get to see him a lot. And as a young boy, I remember thinking, like, when I have kids, I want to be there. And this morning, I took my daughter to gymnastics and doing things like that. Like, I want to be a present dad. Like, to me, everything else comes second to family. Like, work comes second, everything. And like, I need to be there for my kids. So a present dad, a fun dad, a strong dad. But also I want to be the example. I think kids learn best through seeing what you do, not what you say. And so I'm like, I want my kids to be healthy. I want them to have fun and look at life through a positive lens. So I'm like, I want to lead that example.
One thing that I've noticed about you is just how much you love your wife.
Totally.
And how you are her greatest supporter. In everything you do, it seems like you are just like directing attention and love and lifting this woman up in any way you can. And it's been something that I've admired about you in that relationship that you guys have together. Mm-hmm. But I wonder, like, where did that come from? Like, even you talking about, like, I read books about it, I prepared for it. The pregnancy, how can I support her? And any chance you get, you talk about how amazing she is, which I think is beautiful.
But also off camera. Like, he's very much like that in person when you're just shooting the shit with him. He's very much like, he loves his family. Family's first. Like, it's not,
I've met Lisa. She is pretty awesome.
Yeah.
But like where did that, is that something that's always been there? Is that something that you've worked on or grown to do? Or
I think so. For me, first of all, I'm like, my wife, to give credit to her, it's like she's truly a remarkable human being. Like, she is the best communicator. She's funny. She's fun to be around. She's truly made me, like, I wouldn't be the man I am today without her. Like, I can go on and on about just how incredible she is as a person. But I think also being like watching my parents get a divorce. And, you know, although I was 4 years old, I didn't understand what that was. But seeing, like, oh, there's like some there's problems in the home. You know, they're fighting, and not like physically. There was no abuse, nothing like that. But like, you can just, you know, as a kid, you're like, oh, this isn't good. And then experiencing, like, you know, my mom dating someone and that didn't work out. And then my dad dating someone and that didn't work out. And just, to me, I was always like, okay, when I do this and I like commit to someone and I decide to marry that person, like, that's it. Like, that's my person. And that's like, no matter what, it's going to work. And so for me, I'm like, I chose Lisa Marie. I'm like, that's my wife. We decided to marry each other. So I'm like, that's my job. Like, this is, now that I've committed to her, I'm like, this is my job in life, my goal in life is to make her life better. I'm like, if I die tomorrow, I would be happy knowing that hopefully I made her life better. Like, that's my goal, is just to be the best husband I can be, the best friend to her that I can be. And I think that's where it comes from. I'm just like, there's friends come and go, as you guys know. Like, And some are
Yeah.
lifelong friends, but I've just like, she's the only person who's had my back and had my best interests through the ups and downs, through the dark times, through the light times. So like, yeah, I'm always gonna support her first. Like she comes before me, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the best qualities as a dad that we can model to our kids. And like all the things that you listed off, it's like to show your kids how much you love their mom and how they come first in your life and how important they are, and just showing that kind of love, like you said, is something that like your kids will forever see and pick up on. And it also builds that like trust and security in them, right?
Yeah, and I think you hit the nail on the head there, no pun intended, but I often say my wife chooses to love me. Like my parents have to love me. My brothers have to love me.
Yeah.
But I didn't have the best childhood, and I don't really have a good relationship with the emotion of love. But the feeling that I get when I'm around my wife and like knowing that she has my back, and just the embrace and the acceptance and like the unconditional love that you feel, you know that it's real because you can feel it. And the fact that she chose me to give that to,
Yeah.
I don't hold that lightly. Like it is that task, Mike, like what you were saying. Like you just, now my goal is to basically try to do whatever I can to make your life easier.
Right.
I just want some boob touches and stuff every once in a while, you know?
Yeah. No, I think that's
Some-
well said, Mark. Like, I feel like not everyone, but I feel like marriage in general and like relationships are taken lightly. And to me, I'm like,
Yeah.
when I see people who are like, oh, the old ball and chain, and like, okay, you can make a joke, obviously, but it's like, if you're not happy, then get out. Like, you have one life,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
and like if you commit to that person, it's like it's not easy. Like you said, you're committing to that person. You're choosing to love. It's not like, well, it's my sister, I gotta love them. But it's like, no, we're choosing this person, and it's like not enough people, I think, like truly commit and put that person first, because there are hard times where you're like, oh, I just want to go to sleep, or I just want to go out with my friends, or I just want to take the easy route. And it's like, love is not about the easy route. Love is about putting the person you love before yourself.
And then it becomes full circle, especially in our industry too. Like I specifically remember talking to like some old timers, and they're like, "Well, you know, the first wife, she didn't really get it, but the job comes first, and you know, this wife, you know, whatever, she understands, she just gets it, you know, like she gets it." I'm like, bro, I don't want to be you.
Yeah, exactly.
Like I don't want to be you living for cigarettes and sawdust. Like that's just not what I'm about, you know.
Yeah.
Anyways,
That does sound
Sometimes
cool,
it
though.
gets,
Cigarettes and sawdust.
I just made that up. Can
think
you believe it? I
that's-
blacked out.
That's a country band right there.
Something
That's an album.
ChatGPT would spit out at you. I've been talking to that way too much.
Sometimes
for
the
the-
overwhelm of life and like putting your kids first, especially like just raising kids, you often are just putting them first. It gets difficult to connect with your wife in that way that we're talking about. We've been finding it's just like you're always focused on what's next for the kids, and your relationship kind of can get put on the back burner sometimes, even when you're not trying to. When you're like actively working against that happening, it's just like the overwhelm and busyness of life takes over, and it's something that's good to remind yourself of, but it's just a real thing that makes relationships really hard.
Have you guys, Michael, I was going to say, have you had any hardships through this first childhood where you've seen the relationship that you guys had together as you and Lisa, and now there's this other being in there, and has that complicated things in any way, like Brian was saying? or have you been just this perfect, amazing person like your beard?
You see his beard?
Yeah, it looks great. It's
You have a
just
great
subtle.
beard too, though.
Thank you. I was just
Yeah.
really searching for a compliment.
There's a lot of great beards.
Yeah, no, I'll take it. I'll take anything, really. Yeah. Honestly, I can see, like, I will say, like, we are stronger now than we ever have been. There is certainly that sacrifice where, like, we would make a point of going out, on a date every other week or every week, and like doing so much together before kids. But then, to Brian's point, it's like once there's a kid involved, there's this little baby that needs that attention, or needs that nurturing, or needs to be prioritized above everyone else's needs. So that relationship aspect does not get put on the back burner, but it's like keeping this child alive, healthy, and safe and happy has to be here. But then as they get older, it's like you can start to make a little bit more space once there's more routine that's built. So like we definitely haven't gone out on as many dates, and that's been hard because we're like there's times we went on a date. Actually, we went on a date tonight. We had a babysitter come over, and then we just went out and we got ice cream, and like it was just something simple that we're just like, she's my best friend, I'm her best friend. We're like, hey, like, I miss you, like, and so just making time. I think it's so important to make that time, and that's the thing, is you have to make it. You can't find this time because, as you guys know, anyone with kids know, I feel like time is just you don't really have a whole lot of time. So you're like, oh, I want to work out. Well, guess I'm getting up before the kid to work out, or I'm going to work out during their nap. Or if I want to go on a date, then we have to create this time together. Otherwise it's just not happening.
Do you find, obviously your dad has made a name for himself, and coming up, you have to kind of fight the urge to like separate your identity from his identity. So do you find yourself being a little bit more like overprotective, or like trying to come out of the spotlight kind of thing with your family, or like if you get recognized in public and stuff like that? How do you handle those situations when you think about growing your family?
Yeah, I definitely, there's certainly, it's funny because I feel like I'm actually a pretty private person. Like I don't put my daughter online, for example. Like my kids, I don't, for me, I'm like, I'm not comfortable putting them online. And like when we meet people in public, like people typically, in my experience, are very respectful. And it's like, if someone asks, they're like, hey, can we take a picture of your daughter? I'm like, absolutely not. So it's just like, but yeah.
I just mean like if somebody were like, hey, can I take a picture of your kid? And be like, no. And they're like, well, come on, please. And like Mark Racing says, like, fuck off. Right. It's not a big deal. But if Mike Holmes Jr. says like, fuck off, suddenly it turns into something. You know what I'm saying?
No, when it comes to family, I'm very much fuck off. Like if someone crosses a boundary, I'm like, oh, you're going to find out real quick that, that smile happy guy is like, he's got a side to him where he's like, don't fuck with my family. I'm very much like they come first, after TV, after work, whatever happens in my career. At the end of the day, to me, my legacy is my family. Right now, my 2 girls. And then once my baby boy's born, then that's my legacy. I'm like, the rest of this doesn't matter. So I'm like, you mess with like my boundaries and what matters to me, then it's like, then you're getting the fuck off.
Yeah. Okay, that's fair.
So all things said, I do enjoy following your life through Instagram, though. And I think like 2 things from that. Like one, the videos that you post of yourself working out with the crib set up, you threw your baby in there to sleep or just play, and you worked out. Like one, I love that you took that time to give your wife a break. And be able to do what she needs to do. And 2, that it didn't stop you from doing the thing that you still love to do. I thought that was so cool of an experience. And I think whether it was a caption or whether I remember you talking about it, of just like, yes, she's a baby and she might not remember this moment, but you want her to see her dad doing hard things and committed to something and working at something. And I thought that was neat. Is there anything more to that from your side beyond the caption?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I think giving your wife time, like each of us need that time. So it's like, if for me at that time when I was able to put her in like a playpen, we would have this it's called a Remy. I'd put her in a Remy, and she couldn't walk at the time. She could crawl a little bit, and even before crawling. So it was like, it's perfect. I'll just put her here, give my wife some time, and then she can watch me work out, because I want to positively influence her and see me doing something, like you said, difficult, but also something that I'm dedicated to, and something that I hope one day she'll do for herself, because it's going to make her healthier in the long run. But it's also like the bonding time. Like one of my favorite things that my daughter does, and it's something like that only people that know my daughter know she does. But, and this is going to sound ridiculous too and look ridiculous, but she goes ah! Like that, because in the gym, and I didn't know why she was doing this at first, because in the gym I would joke with her. I'd be like, okay, Azura, big lift, here we go, let's go. Ooh. And like I just joke with her doing something like that, and then all of a sudden she would start doing this and it's like, and then it's like the cutest thing that I'm like, oh man, this is my favorite thing. So beyond everything you said, which honestly you touched on most points, Dave, it's just like that connection also with her, that like that father-daughter time. Because truly at first, as you know, if the woman is fortunate enough to be able to breastfeed, like my wife was, it's like you're like, I'm my wife's support. I'm not really like, my daughter's here, she's like, hey, you're all right, but I want mama. So for me, it was like that bonding time with her, that thing that we did together. And I have the most beautiful moments captured that I'm so happy about, of like her crawling around, working out with me, climbing on me as I'm working out, and like us just like enjoying each other's company together in that time.
Yeah.
I love that.
I found a video, it was in like the Facebook archives that came up, of my son when he was 2 years old, and I was doing like kettlebell swings with him, and I'm swinging him up in the air and dropping him down, and doing like this, like just playing with him, and he's giggling and laughing and laughing. And then I say in the video, I'm like, who needs kettlebells when you got this? And then fast forward to today, I dropped my son off
I
at...
thought you were going to say you dropped him.
No, I've dropped them plenty of times, don't worry. They're resilient. But I dropped him off at the community center, and he was doing Nerf Wars. So, like, him and his buddy are going, and it's like all these like, whatever, the same age, they're getting together and playing Nerf Wars in a gym. And I go to the gym and was doing kettlebell swings in the gym and working out with the kettlebell today.
That's funny.
And it was just one of those moments of like 12 years later, or 10 years, I guess, because he was 2 at the time.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh wait, I guess I do need the kettlebells, because I can't kettlebell swing this 12-year-old anymore.
That's so funny.
That would be an awkward kettlebell swing at that point.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But there is a level of like keeping yourself fit to be able to keep up with these kids, because my son is just like chomping at the bits to beat me at anything now.
Okay.
And we played basketball in his bedroom. He's got one of those mini hoops on the door. And he beat me, and he was like, boom, take that, Dad. And he's telling everybody, like, hey, remember that time when I beat you? And he's just embarrassing me all along. So it's just like, you've got to keep your fitness up.
Did you let him?
Oh, of course. I could have dominated. Like, my hand was covering the rim.
He lost.
Okay?
He got spanked.
You don't let your kids win at anything.
Ben
What are you
spanked
talking
him.
about?
Spanked him. So 2 things, okay? If you could have any advice for new parents, which would it be? And then you don't know who the next guest on our podcast is, but I want you to ask them a question that they have to answer.
You stole that from another podcast. I love you did
I
that.
thought you were the one that didn't plug other podcasts.
I didn't say who it was. I didn't say who it was.
Okay,
but I
sure.
saw it and I liked it and I took it.
I think piece of advice that I would give new parents, I'll give dad advice, since I feel like I'm I can do that now. I would say, dads, put your wife first. Make sure she's taken care of, and obviously the baby needs to be taken care of, but she's going to make sure that baby's taken care of. If she needs your support at night, get up, change the diaper, get up. If you're bottle feeding the baby, like, just make sure your presence is known, and that after that time of like the hectic part of that newborn, when baby's not sleeping, it's like, make sure that your wife knows that you're in it. And I think, honestly, always put each other first, because without your wife, it's like that kid, it wouldn't be here. So it's like, and that is setting such a good example for your kids as well, because if they feel like they're in a loving home, I think that's just going to be so much healthier for them. And then a question for the next guest. I got to think about this
You
one
can
for a
sit on
second.
it. Dave has his thinking face on.
I
Yeah,
got one more question if you want to sit on it first.
Got more questions.
Okay. I just want to
Buckle
know,
up.
you got baby number 2 on the way. What are you most excited for with having another little one around? Do you have any expectations at all of what you're in for?
The key to happiness is low expectations. I'm just throwing that out there right now.
Yes, we know that, but I want to know what you think.
I'm honestly just like, like I said before, my wife's my best friend, and my daughter is now my other best friend. You know what I mean? Like, I've got other best friends too, but I just mean, like, you, with having kids, like, you're just having an army of your own best friends. Like, it's the coolest thing. So, aside from the exhaustion,
What are you doing on Valentine's Day? Because I'm trying to get someone to go to Philadelphia with me for this thing. I'd love it if you came, Mike.
We got them
How many are your best friends tell you they hate you and they want you to die?
Well, his daughter's not there yet.
One last question for you, and then we can let you go. But this question is from one of our Patreons, Paul Cronin. And he wanted to know, it seems that they moved out of the city before their daughter was born. Was this because you wanted to raise your family away from the hustle and bustle, or if it was just a coincidence? And follow up, would they ever consider moving back to the city, or are you now comfortable in a small town?
That's a great question, Paul. It was kind of circumstantial. We bought a place back in 2017 as an investment, as mainly we're just like, we like it up north. It's got property. We'll rent it out. We rented it out for a couple of years, and then the pandemic came, and we're like, with all the restrictions and everything, we're like, I don't want to be in a condo in Toronto. Like, I want to be somewhere where I can go outside and play sports, go work out, go do, like, have my own space. So that was kind of what brought us up north. And now I'm like, I work in the city. I do a lot of commuting, and I don't want to spend any more time in the city than I have to.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yep.
Did you play rugby at Uxbridge High? Just a question.
I did play. I played rugby at Uxbridge Secondary School, and then I also played for Brock Rugby Club.
Okay. What year are you?
89.
Okay, so I definitely played rugby against you. Yeah. I was a Port Perry
You're
guy.
88, right?
You were a Port Perry guy.
Wow.
So
You were one of our
That's
They hate each other. They hate each other.
Yeah, Port Perry was
So
like
we definitely played rugby against each other
when
at
there
some
was
point.
like, especially the Uxbridge Fair. I don't know if you were one of the guys that would come to the Uxbridge Fair, and it was like, us Uxbridge guys, it was always like, oh, Port Perry guys and Stouffville guys are here. We better fight.
No, that was not me. I was a
probably
lover,
me.
not a fighter. But yeah.
So we'll let you text us your question for the next guest. You don't have to be put on the spot for it. You can think about it.
I don't have a problem putting him on the spot. Think.
Also, my wife texted me and said she's falling asleep, so I've got a little more time.
Oh yeah. See, he can
He's
think.
falling asleep. They had a date. You gotta go.
No,
She's not pregnant. Never mind.
She's exhausted. It's good. Let's see the question. I feel like, and is the question for the next guest is like, we don't know if they have kids already or if they're having kids, right?
It could be anything. Like
It really could be anyone.
it could literally be anyone.
We should have gave him a little heads up
Yeah,
here.
there's no parameters. It could be a question about anything.
Listen,
and
I
they
saw it on
gotta
the
deal
other
with it.
podcast. It played out pretty well.
It's
so
the other person's problem. It's not your problem.
Yeah, 100%.
Michael.
You throw it up there. Like, what do their lifts look like? Well, I don't work out. Shame on you.
Especially if this is the first one, I'm like, oh damn, this is important. I gotta set the tone here.
Next guest is.
I don't know who the next guest is going to be. It could be Brent Walker. It could be.
That's not going to be. We're not wasting a
it could be
question.
Tyler
from
Shaw.
Yeah, Tyler Shaw.
It could be Tyler Shaw.
Could be Tyler
possibly.
Shaw. We're not wasting a Michael Holmes
could
Jr.
save it for
question on
Tyler.
Brent Walker. Come on.
I think maybe what like looking into the future, if you could ask your kid when they're older, if you're like thinking about your kid when they're older, what do you want? How do you want them to see you when they're an adult? Because like we all know how we see our parents now. And it's like, I think that's a big impact on how we raise our kids certain ways. So it's like, how do you want your kids to see you when they're grown up and they know your faults?
That's good.
That's a good question.
Do you have a good
I've never
relationship
heard-
with your dad?
Do I have a good relationship with my dad? Is that what you asked?
Yeah.
Yeah, I do. We've had, at times it's been rocky because I work for him. So it's been like, I didn't, again, kind of to make a long story short, I didn't see him much growing up. And I felt like that impacted me significantly as a kid. So then when my motivation to work for him, when he's like, hey, why don't you come work for me? I didn't want to be a contractor at the time. I'm like, I want to spend time with my dad. And then I was like, oh, construction's also pretty cool. But then it's like, I worked for him and became a man at the same time. So naturally you're going to butt heads. And yeah, we butt heads a lot for a couple of years, but like we're on the other side of that now where we have such good communication now. And when we argue, it's like it's squashed so quick. So yeah, I have a really good relationship with him now.
Are you able to have those conversations with him now to like learn his truths about those hard times when you were growing up, I should say?
Yeah, I've had a lot of good conversations with him about when we were kids and like that was like.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, like not a lot of people know that about me. Like they think they see my dad and they're like, oh, he's always been this rich guy. It's like my dad came from nothing. When we were kids, the three of us and my dad at one time slept in one bed in his buddy's basement. So like he had nothing, and there was obviously reasons between him and my mom that she wanted full custody. So she got that, and we saw him every second weekend, but like he worked when we weren't there, he was working. Like he didn't have a life.
Yeah.
So it was just like, to him, it was just like, I want to provide for my kids. And that was his big motivator.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's interesting because my dad was similar. Like he worked a lot, and I didn't see him or spend a lot of time with him. And he's battling stage 4 cancer right now. So, but I don't have that relationship with him. But I want to know like his truth.
What if you just asked him?
I don't think he would. I don't think he would right now.
Just to ask him like what it was like, or
I don't know. I often find, because I'm very much like you, like all of us, where I'm like, family's so important to me because I felt like I was like almost robbed of it when I was younger.
Fair, yeah.
And so now that I'm on that side and I do have these kind of struggles, I'm like, maybe that's why my dad chose to go to work more so that he could escape it. Or maybe he wasn't the person that I thought he was. You know what I'm saying? Like with just those different types of emotions. And I find it so interesting to gain obviously other people's perspective. And I know, Dave, you have a really good relationship with your dad, but it's just one of those things where like, we don't have the relationship, and I was just out for lunch with him yesterday with like the whole family. So it's not like one of those things. Hi to Joey. What?
I'm just bringing Joey into the bar because Joey would answer this for you.
Right.
And that I know from talking with Joey and his therapy journey that he's been on, with his dad not being in a great place.
Yeah.
His therapist had said that like regret is one of the hardest things for them to help a client or a patient kind of go through. And she encouraged Joey to have the conversations with his dad while he was still able to have the conversations
Mm.
because sometimes you can put on expectations of what you think that conversation might be,
Yeah.
but you don't know what it will be until you have it, right? Similar to a pregnancy, you don't know what it's going to be until it comes. And she said regret is one of the hardest things to overcome. So I think Joey would encourage you to maybe just try. Maybe start with an easy question and just throw it out there and see what happens.
Maybe I might.
I think that's a great point. I was going to say something similar, like not that you asked for advice on this, Mark. And first and foremost, I should say I'm very sorry to hear that about your dad. That's awful. But I think
appreciate that.
At the end of the day, regardless of what happens, hopefully he beats it. I think you need to have peace of mind, and you might be surprised. Like there's been times that I've had conversations with my dad where I'm like, shit, I did not expect this to go that way, or you to be this real with me, or and I think expectations aside, I think you need to clear your conscience and know that, like, maybe write a list down of things you want answers to, and try and sit down and have that time with them.
Yeah, no, it is good advice. And it is something like, there is a thing now where it's like, Dad, I want to hear your story. It's like a book, and you basically give it to them and like they can write it down.
We got a fucking podcast for the kids.
Totally. Yeah. We started this silly podcast journal that we've got floating around. But it is something that I've always felt like I would like to know, but we just don't have that relationship to have like an honest conversation about it. I don't know. And maybe I'm wrong and I'm telling myself a story. So I'm going to park it. I'll take this one offline.
Yeah. We'll see what goes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Michael, thank you. We will thank you so much for your time.
Yeah,
absolutely. There's a lot of questions that I have, and this could go on forever. And something I'm learning is that this doesn't have to just be one time.
Yes.
We can talk again and multiple times. I don't have to get every single thing in my mind out in 1 hour. So thank you for your time. We so value you. We value you listening to this podcast, who you are in the construction industry, emulating what we try to put out into that industry as well, and changing the stigma of what a contractor looks like. But you're also doing that as a dad, which I think is why we wanted to have you on here so badly, because you were changing the stigma of what a dad is as well. And you were...
And a dad bod as well.
Yeah, my God.
Crazy.
The abs on that guy?
Okay, it's impressive with one kid, but like I'll be more impressed if you keep it going when you have 2 or 3 or 4 kids.
Yeah.
So keep it up,
We'll
buddy.
do too. We'll do a check when the second kid comes, but I don't play.
Don't say challenge to Dave though. Fuck, I can't handle any more challenges.
We'll see if he's doing push-ups
Oh
with us
my
or not.
God.
Starts tomorrow. You ready to do your
No,
push-ups?
we got Mike Holmes gonna do my
I
100.
am not prepared.
This is gonna air 2 weeks from now, but tomorrow is tomorrow.
Yeah.
Fine.
Michael, I want to say good luck to you and
Yes.
Lisa.
Yes.
We're thinking
That's
of you.
incredibly exciting. We're sending all of the positive vibes to match
Absolutely.
your positive vibes.
Yeah.
I hope it goes as well as the first one did.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you guys very much. It's been an absolute pleasure. I've truly been looking forward to chatting with you for, God, 2 years now. I can't remember how long ago we started this, but I would love for part 2 to be in person, just because I just know, I just want to be there talking with you guys, and we can talk for as long as we want. We will make it work. And also, on a side note, thank you guys for doing what you do and watching, the Joey and Dave that I knew on Home to Win just blossom into these like incredible leaders in the industry, who are super kind, and like watching you guys and your crew. I'm like, I'm on the sidelines cheering you guys on all the way, and I love what you're doing and the people that you surround yourselves with. So huge fan of all of yours. So thank you for doing all that.
Thank you, Michael. You're amazing.
Man, I have goosebumps. Now.
Right?
Yeah.
Such a good human.
Next time, maybe Joey won't skip out on the party.
Yeah.
We'll have him back.
I was gonna say, actually, I meant
but
that
don't
to everyone
hang up.
but Joey, because he didn't.
Yeah, what an asshole.
Joey.
Oh, poor guy.
Just kidding, Joey.
Doghouse.
Love you.
He's got a fever at home.
Yeah.
Well,